Drilling fluids touch just about everything in the drilling process. We're here to deconstruct the drilling process and drilling fluid concepts to provide a deeper understanding of our industry. In each episode, we'll share information, talk to interesting people, and maybe share a few stories along the way. Welcome to the Flowline, a production of AES Drilling Fluids, brought to you by Matt Offenbacher and Justin Gauthier.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Flowline. And by amazing, I think we're actually right now ranked as the top drilling fluid podcast in the world.
Really? Is it because we might be one of the only drilling fluid podcasts in the world, or how does that work?
I'm willing to bet that we are one of few, if not the one.
But we're up there.
Yeah, most definitely. Highly ranked in our world. Self-proclaimed probably, but that's okay.
Let's go with it.
Matt, I know you probably aren't watching baseball, but you might be. Have you been keeping up with the Blue Jays?
I have, and so, when my team is not in contention, I feel like I need to be more positive. I need to get behind a team as opposed to have spite teams.
Right, yeah.
I've mainly been focusing on wanting the Mariners to lose,
right,
as opposed to having the Blue Jays win. Although you've got George Springer over there,
I forgot he was there, but I didn't realize he'd been there since like 19 or something.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
He was one of the first to go of the original core group. But anyways, and he looked like he was kind of declining. He had a bit of a resurgence this year. So so I've been sort of rooting against the Mariners as opposed to rooting for the Blue Jays. But now I'm like, no, this is pretty cool. And the other thing, like Vlad Guerrero Jr. I'm trying not to butcher this. He just has this beautiful swing, and so when he hits it, it's just.
Okay, I'll have to watch it. Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah.
Go Blue Jays.
Go Jays.
Because tonight is Game 7, right?
Yeah.
Holy smokes. And then...
Winner go home.
Yeah. And then whoever gets that gets to take on the old Dodgers.
Yeah.
Which, again, is, I would imagine, a spite team for you.
Oh, yeah. Beyond spite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm assuming you don't, but do you have any money on the Blue Jays? Like Nate does?
No. So Nate's kind of a degerate, so that's, not a fair question. So
Matt would say that to his face, by the way. So for those wondering,
no.
Matt doesn't talk behind people's backs. He's very much direct.
He just is always looking for action on things. But I remember when the lottery got really big, and I was like, that's stupid. All I do is lose money. And then I was like, well, if everybody else is giving you $20, I don't want to be here by myself if you win. Yeah. And so I felt like the $20 was the investment to avoid being alone.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's cool. But no, it's fun, man. Baseball's gonna be good. Hopefully we'll be able to catch a bit of the game tonight. And my kids like watching baseball too. So when we get back from practice tonight, maybe we'll throw it on and cheer for the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
Anyway, on to the drilling fluid side of the world. Kind of an interesting topic today. Something we've not really touched on, I don't think, ever. But and this kind of came because we had someone come to me a while back and say, how do we, because it was from a different department that wasn't on the sales side, was like, how do we actually get work? And it got me thinking, and I was like, well, there's a bunch of different ways, but one of the main ways is through what we'd call an RFP, which, a request for a proposal. And so I thought it would just be interesting to kind of break down what that is and how, say, a mud business approaches it, not necessarily how we do, because there's some things there that obviously we'd want to not share publicly, but just broadly speaking, what a RFP is, what the intent is, and how the business approaches bidding work for a customer.
Yes, absolutely. And I think hopefully if we can kind of structure our thoughts here, one of the things I think that comes of it is sort of how we like to see things. Yeah. Or how it's most helpful to sort of find a way to shine. Yeah. Because it seems like depending on who's put it out there, they're looking for different things. Yeah. So let's go. Yeah, that's a good point. And and I've heard this from customers and engineers and supply chain folks for that matter, saying drilling fluids is typically the hardest service to evaluate because it's not black and white, right? There's a lot of different things that go into drilling fluids. And so
yeah, it's challenging. But to your point, yeah, kind of from our standpoint, things we typically like to see. But let's kind of start off, Matt. What would you say when a customer sends out a request for a proposal? What are their goals or objectives? Because it's not just one thing all the time.
Yeah, and look, I'll say if you're on the side of issuing one of these, it's helpful to know, hey, I'm just testing the market, which is basically like, I want to see if your pricing's still competitive.
Right.
Other times I'm testing the market because I want to see what other players are out there and what they have. Other times it could even be like, we're not aware of new offerings or technologies, and so we want you to, like, we're going to put a bid out there because we want to see if been doing this 5 years and like something has changed that we haven't brought into our contracts and our fold.
Yeah.
So sometimes just asking the question sort of inspires, okay, this is what you're looking for. Sometimes we're just trying to get cheaper, but there's always, cheaper how, right? Because efficiency brings lower cost. It could be like, look, if there's new technology out there and it costs more but saves me money, like, that's what I'm trying to find out.
Yeah. And what's interesting too on that side of things is it's oftentimes there can be a disconnect on the goals that, say, a supply chain team has versus the engineering team. And so they look at the things through a different lens. And so having alignment between everyone who's involved is super critical. Talk about the different type of business models that, we can approach it with.
I mean, most of these bids, for us at least, are going to be what we would call full service. So this is where, we have field personnel on, like, we provide field personnel. We're doing the design work, the fluid, mud program, all the way through, handling all the logistics. It's, you are my service provider for all these things.
Right.
We find ourselves sometimes in other more niche or customized where, say, the operator may have their own mud engineers, or they may have one mud engineer and we provide the other one. Or, hey, I'm just looking for chemicals. What we generally find is or I think a lot of where AES shines is we know when and how the chemicals are to be applied, and that's where a lot of the value comes from. And so in light of that, we tend to, I think, prefer and shine in the full service model, but we have these awesome relationships with other customers where it's like, hey, we're going to provide the products and help you out. And there's just different versions of that, but I think also being part of a service company is being flexible for what the customer wants. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of like your mainstream stuff, and then there's some other type of conversations about ways we can orient our business to customer needs and still make sure we can contribute.
Yeah.
So
no, that's absolutely. And one thing, kind of moving on to success metrics, and it's always what one person deems as successful, another one might not find as important. But the reality is, there's certain different metrics that operators will use to evaluate us. And so, Matt, can you break down each of these metrics? And there may be some more, but for the most part, there's kind of a handful that are looked at most importantly.
Yeah, I mean, look, it may be, it's sort of like, what's your yardstick? Because cost per foot, we want to see the lowest cost per foot. That's a common, way to measure things. It could be sometimes like, look, we are really concerned about safety performance. And so, costs are a factor. Like, this is something that we want to see. And then supply chain. So it may be, hey, we used some really low cost guys. They were the cheapest, but the products weren't on location in time. Mm-hmm. So, like a lot of this, we want to be convinced that you're going to be able to keep products where they are at the time we need them. And that sort of ties into like non-productive time. It could be the operator is having issues with fluids related non-productive time that are costing so much to say, let's put this out to bid and see how other people would solve this problem.
Right.
So you can sort of test the waters and ask people for these things and see how they align. So on one side, the bid can be structured in a way to ask these questions and say, these are priorities for us. And then on the flip side of it, as a service provider, you can say, look, here's why we think we can do that.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Talk about the weighting. How much weight is put in certain, I guess, categories?
This is always an interesting one for us, right? Because I think some supply chain, normally they might be handling all kinds of different services, and so they're like, look, I need to figure out how I can, make you the same as everybody else, and then I pick the cheapest one.
Yeah.
And that's always hard for us because, well, what are your priorities? Like, is pricing the most important thing? And what is it like? You can have it cheap or you can have it right. So sometimes just picking the cheapest can be a fairly, dangerous aspect. But hey, pricing is what this is all about. We've got a marching orders, and I need to go back to my boss and say that I cut costs.
Yeah.
It could be that, we're willing to pay more to make sure that things are there on time. So, you might not be the cheapest, but the fact that we pay more money for you to hold more inventory for us, that's fine. But what we can't have is the rig waiting.
Yeah.
Technical capabilities, like it's really important. Then you can help us in our sort of digital innovations, or we want to do more automation, and like, how does the fluids company help us do that? And that ties into, technology innovation, or even just, do you have the technical support if we have a problem?
Yeah.
So, we like to show off our lab and say, hey, if you have a problem ongoing, we'll get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And then, safety. So safety's always, the thing is, safety always seems as this go, no-go kind of aspect, right? If you can't work safe, you can't work. And yes, there's an argument to be made, but there's also like, what is your threshold from different benchmarks, and what does safety participation look like?
Mm-hmm.
And how much do you value that? Is it our numbers are low enough, or here are behavioral-based safety programs, and it's going to fit right in with operator initiatives, and I'll pay more for that.
Right.
And market experience, right? Like, you might have the cheapest prices, but it may be that you've never drilled a well in that area, and that may feel, risky.
Right.
And we've been on the side of that, frankly. Like, I don't think it was like the cheapest, but I mean, we hired people who had the experience, but as a company, we hadn't drilled in certain areas, and we had to build a lot of trust, and then we got our opportunity.
Yeah.
So it's one of those. I think a lot of the resistance in bids prior was we didn't have the experience.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's, hey, these are the things I'm looking at for the bid, and then this is how important they are to me.
Yeah.
Is normally what we're trying to hash out.
Yeah. No, and it depends on the operator's goals, right? Like, we went through a bid one time, and they were really looking at some new technology that we had, and they wanted to see if anyone else had it along, because it was something that was slowly being rolled out in a certain basin, and it was heavily weighted on the technical capabilities, and so I'm sure they looked at everything else, and if something would have been extremely out of line, I'm sure they would have come back and renegotiated or addressed it. But again, each operator's sort of goal at the time can be different, and so they waited. And there's typically, for a lot of the larger operators, they have a sort of like a scoring metric that they do, and then all of a sudden they use the data to make the decision, which oftentimes can or cannot work out in their favor. But then sometimes you get the smaller folks who they just want to program and pricing, and they just look at the cost of barite and maybe a few other things, and hopefully with sort of meetings and conversations we've had with them that they feel comfortable, or maybe they've called some buddies who've used us, and they kind of use that approach and pull the trigger on using us for that reason, or whoever they decide. So again, the weighting is interesting because it's different for every customer.
Sure.
On the pre-bid side, it's there's definitely some background work I think that is critical, and so talk a little bit about pre-bid.
So if we know a bid is coming out, or it seems like it's been a little while, it seems to be when the bid is issued, we find ourselves in this place where we're not really allowed to talk. And the idea is, I mean, this is many operators have this policy where what they want to do is they want to make sure everybody's on even ground. So if I'm able to pull somebody aside and ask a question that no one else can hear, and get a bit of information, and it could be inadvertent, but that could give me an advantage that somebody else doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times before the bid, if it's coming and there's still that like open dialogue period, there's a lot of open-ended questions. What are you looking for? How would you handle this? Because the scary thing is you want to validate all your assumptions about what expectations are, because the problem is when the bid is out and they're like, I can't answer that question, you might you might cost yourself an opportunity if you make the wrong assumption about how they want you to approach typical. What is your definition of typical costs? Do you want me to give you a best case scenario for a well cost? Or do you want me to give you the most likely cost? Those kinds of things. So, pre-bid is sort of getting that clarity. And I think it's kind of worth bundling together the actual bidding process itself, where one of the bigger challenges we face is that we don't a lot of times it's, hey, give me a typical well in this area drilled on this bench. But sometimes the problem is you can sort of say, okay, well, I have this customer that got lucky one time. Like, do you want the cheapest ever, or do you want something that really applies to your program? And this is where, when the operator comes out and says, hey, this is our casing program, these are all of our assumptions. Now you give me a cost associated with that standardized well design, specific area that we're going to drill, like more detail such that we can come back and say, hey, this is what we think. Where we've encountered a few times where we've lost work, and it was, hey, you do understand that that's not even enough mud volume to drill with, especially when you talk about dilution rates and things like that. Where they said, well, it was cheaper, and it's like, well, it won't be once they start drilling, and we know that. So providing clarity and standardization, even maybe knowing the rig you're going to drill with, and what kind of expectations, because the other contrast we have is a lot of our people who are responding to the bid are people who are doing engineering design, because they know how it's executed. And when they ask a question, it's to a supply chain person who says, my boss told me to put a bid out. And so there's that disconnect between the drilling engineer, the supply chain professional, and then our side on the engineering side. And so sometimes stuff gets lost in translation, and we don't. Those mix-ups are just so stressful, because you want to win the work, you want to get this opportunity, and your best foot forward might be lost because you didn't understand what was expected, or you made an assumption that wasn't quite right. So that's where just a lot of these things hinge upon. No,
and that's the hardest part, is when you're having to make lofty assumptions that really kind of, I would say, meaningfully change the outcome of the proposal. And you do your best to gather as much information as possible, but sometimes I think that operators don't understand how much information we really need to fine-tune things. Because if you're left with too many assumptions, you have to bake that into your economics.
Right.
And so the more detail you have, the more you can fine-tune your economics, which ultimately plays in their favor. But if we're left to a bunch of unknowns, and we kind of have to protect ourselves, which means, again, you have to you price it a certain way, and so it can be challenging, but you do your best. And fortunately with unconventional is when someone puts out a bid for a basin where we've got several rigs, there's not too much left to assume, whether it be mud weight or casing design, but again, more detail the better, because we can do a better job at giving you the best price, essentially.
And I think it also sort of levels the playing field, where it's like, let me, we see sometimes folks be like, let me give you the lowest concentration we've ever used for this.
Sure.
And it's like, no, let's, the one thing that I challenged one of our customers for is, I was like, okay, so you put these bids out. Do you ever compare what actually happens to what they told you in the bid? And it's like, well, the supply chain people aren't paying attention at that point, right? It's handed back over to engineering once you've awarded the work. So being realistic, and we know this is hard if you're a supply chain person and you're picking, you're buying casing one day and then you're trying to buy drilling fluids the next. And so there's a lot of sort of just copy paste, and we get this is painful for you too. But one sort of pain point for us is, hey, give me a price for all these products. And sometimes it's like a list of 300 products, like every product you've ever used in this area of the country ever. Or it's a bunch of products that are like really hard to get and maybe aren't used that much anymore. And it's just, you've copied and pasted so many times that we find ourselves in a position where we're like getting a quote for 15 products that are barely gettable. and there's newer, more effective materials out there.
Yeah.
It just and you don't want to you don't want to like not answer the question, right? That like you feel like it's killer to like leave something blank.
Right.
So those things, sort of, primary and secondary emulsifiers. And it's like, well, we only have one main emulsifier. It's the primary and secondary together.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what do I put in the other box? Because if you add the two together, then it's going to make me look really expensive, even though I don't want to sell you the other one.
Yeah.
I digress.
You're right. Yeah.
But,
I've ran into that a lot of times.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But, yeah, again, it's, going back to it, when you submit the RFP and there's an evaluation process and sometimes you get folks that'll be willing to take a call and explain why you didn't get the bid. But I think feedback is critical, and not necessarily for the operator, but it's for us to plan our business. And so I think the feedback is something that I wish we had more of a lot of times. I would say 90% of the time it's, oh, you guys were too expensive. Or like, and I say that broadly speaking, I'm sure anyone who has done an RFP who wasn't awarded the work was told you were too expensive. You know what I mean? And so it's like, okay, yeah, we get it. But like, is there anything else?
Right. Well, and expensive in what way? Where could we have shown better value? Like it's a reflective opportunity for us to say, hey, we're not going about this the right way.
Right.
And to some degree, there's just that aspect of business, but it's also pretty constructive when it's like, hey, we were actually kind of looking for this, and you didn't mention it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is, if price was the first thing, that's fine, and I get it. Or, look, we all know so-and-so are good friends, and that work was based on a relationship, and it was probably going to continue because they weren't too expensive. But anything that makes it the next time around better than it was the time you didn't get the work is really constructive.
Yeah.
So I think that feedback is valuable. I think even including, if you have a say-so in the bid for having triggers to say, like, here's when we're going to have a conversation because price spiked, or something happened that changed how we're going to do business. There's a pandemic, there's a shipping crisis, there's, who knows what the world brings. But saying, okay, let's have an understanding that like we've got this agreement, but we're going to have these conversations that they happen, sort of promote more partnership and communication.
Yeah.
I guess that's when you do get the work. When you don't, I think even when you do get the work, I think feedback can be like, hey, we gave you this work because we're excited about this.
Yes.
Because then it's like, you know what, this is what I need to deliver on.
Right.
Like, there's the high-fiving of how we got the work, and then there's the like, well, wait a minute, if this is the part they're most excited about, I need to, like, that's where the energy goes. Not to say those other things aren't important, but if this is the priority, let's make sure we don't pretend like we're going to get complacent after getting the chance. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more, and I think overall just communication. I think they're even sort of backing up when sort of the pre-bid work. It would be nice if almost there was and again, some of the larger operators have a very extensive bid that you have to go through, and there's lab work and there's this and there's that, and it's a full package. Almost having an opportunity to have a meeting to discuss the bid and walk through certain things and make sure there's an understanding of what are you really looking for.
Yes.
And so whether that ever happens or not, that would be a pretty that'd be a great request to have someone follow through on. But nonetheless, again, it's a big part of the business. We have a lot of time and resources dedicated to putting together nice packages, and obviously fine-tuning pricing. And but yeah, it's ultimately for someone out there who's wondering, like, how do you actually get on a job? A lot of times, operators will send these out to a handful, 5, 6, 7, 8 different mud companies. We all put our best foot forward, and then they evaluate it. And so, it's an interesting process. And if anyone out there has any experience or maybe wants to add to what we've talked about today, or maybe has some questions, happy to chat about it. Matt, I don't really have any other questions or thoughts around it. I think it was a good conversation nonetheless.
Yeah, well, I think the only other thing I'll add, partially in jest and partially out of misery, is many times these bids are submitted into these horrible online systems.
Oh, yeah.
That, hey, it's due at midnight or whatever. And like you go to put it in, and you're working up until the last minute, and then you can't log in or something like that. So it's even like, hey, test upload your first document just to make sure it works.
Yeah.
And everybody's under the same situation, but it's usually late at night and everybody's panicking because of some IT issue.
Yeah.
That's part of the experience sometimes.
Yeah. No, those big online platforms that you submit bids on can be a bit of a nightmare, but once you've done a handful of them, they all are kind of the same. But that's funny you mentioned that. I've had some stressful moments trying to get everything in at the last minute. But nonetheless, folks, if you have any thoughts, questions, reach out to us on LinkedIn, or you can reach us at the Flowline podcast at aesfluids.com. Be sure to check out the AES Fluids page. Tons of great content out there. The tech tips on YouTube. Just again, a bunch of solid information to learn from about drilling fluids. And with that said, everyone, take care for now. Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. Please tune in next week for another exciting episode of The Flowline. And remember, may your returns always be full and your trips always smooth. Views expressed in this program belong to participants and not their employees. The program is for informational purposes only and cannot take the place of seeking professional advice. Copyright AES Drilling Fluids.